Hello and welcome to Podcasting 101 Part 2. This is a class that we've had on the calendar a couple of different times, and due to various pandemic stuff, we have been unable to have it, and so I'm excited to finally be able to present it. Now, if you joined us either, oh goodness gracious, back in like March, maybe February for Part 1, welcome back. Or, if you joined us last month for the first virtual version of this class, also welcome back. But we'll be picking up from where we started last time, which was developing the podcast. I think when a lot of people sign up for this class, one of the things that they think they're going to do is they're going to sit down in front of a microphone immediately. And if you have been in one of our class in Podcasting 101 Part 1, then you know that we actually spend the first half of the class developing the idea for a podcast. Now, because we are live streaming today, if you have any questions, you can put them in the live chat. I will try to keep an eye on that. Please do keep in mind, though, that there's a bit of a delay between me and the YouTube video, so I may be slow to respond, but I will try to respond. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Trey Gwynn. You may remember me from the last time you came to this class. I am the Technology and Outreach Coordinator for the Rutherford County Library System. I am a amateur podcaster. I don't have any current podcasts, but I have developed and produced 3 over the years. And of course, I am a huge podcast listener. I should have updated this, but now it's even more. In fact, I bet I can, just for funsies, let's take a look. Now I'm up to, can you see that? Hold on, let's see. Where's my camera? 147 days. So I've listened to 3 more days since the last time I updated this. Now, of course, listening to a whole bunch does not mean that that makes you an expert any more than watching a bunch of television makes you an expert at making television. But I just think it's a fun thing to keep an eye on. Now, for this class, we are going to focus on production of podcasts. So, like I said, we spent last time talking about developing the idea for a podcast, making sure that you have a plan going into it, making sure that you have a plan based on who you're inviting to be part of it, that kind of thing. This time we're going to talk about the nitty-gritty of like getting the podcast onto tape. Next month, actually in early December, because of the Thanksgiving holiday, I had to bump it back a week. But in early December, we will be doing Podcasting 101 Part 3, which is it'll be on December 4th, and that will be all about distributing podcasts, because that is its own interesting little puzzle that you have to figure out if you're going to have a podcast. So, moving on, let's start with part 1 of production, and that is buy a microphone even if it's cheap. If you have a laptop, it probably has a built-in microphone, or these days we're on a lot of Zoom calls and stuff like that, and you might have a headset, and it might sound fine. But if you want to take your podcast, the idea, the production of your podcast to the next level, buying a microphone is a good way to do it, and they're not terribly expensive. There are plenty of hobbyist options for for microphones out there right now. I've got a few on the screen. I'm not endorsing any of them necessarily. These are just what I found after a quick search for, microphones under $200. The one on the far left is actually the one I'm using for this class. You can put it up on the screen. I'm pretty happy with it. It's my personal one. I use it at work though for the virtual classes that we're doing. I'm relatively happy with it. But if you there are even some of those headset microphones like you see on the screen that are nice enough that you could probably get away with using it to record your podcast. And so that's why I say that, even if it's a relatively cheap one, the fact that you have a microphone can make your podcast sound so much better for one specific reason, and that's placement. The microphone that's built into your laptop is not made to go to be in a specific place, right? Like you have to. It is static. It is not. It is difficult for you to move it into a better position, whereas literally any of these microphones, because they are controlled, because they have a wire that goes to the laptop and connects through USB, it means that no matter what the shape of the pickup pattern is, and we'll talk about pickup patterns here in a second, because of that, the fact that you can move them around, position them, will make you automatically sound better than you would have otherwise. Now let's take a second to talk about pickup patterns. It's something that you need to pay attention to. This image may be too small for you to actually see, but I wanted to have an illustrative image. Not all microphones are created the same. Different microphones are meant to do different things. I think that that's something that people outside of industries that do sound recording, I think that's something that people don't realize. Like there are microphones for talking into, and then there are microphones for, say, picking up an entire choir, or specifically made to go on to like different pieces of a drum kit, and they all work differently and they have different functions, and they're made to do different things. Now obviously any microphones that we're talking about for podcasting are going to be specifically made for picking up speech, and it's something that you'll need to keep an eye on when you buy your microphone or borrow your microphone. However you're going to get a microphone, it's going to be something that you need to pay attention to. There are some even that can change their pattern, their pickup pattern. So actually, in fact, I believe, and I might be wrong, but I'm going to use it as an example anyways, that, where's my pointer? This one right here, this microphone right here, can actually change its pickup pattern from being a cardioid, that we'll talk about here in just a second, to an omnidirectional mic. And depending on the kind of podcast that you're going to make, see, this is why you need to think these things through before you start recording anything. Buying a microphone that can switch from one type of pickup pattern to another might be useful to you. So the most common that we're going to run into for uses like this for podcasts are what are called cardioid microphones, and they literally pick up a heart-shaped pattern in front of the microphone. So it gets a little bit over to the side, a little bit over to the other side, and then it mostly picks up directly in front of the microphone, right? And so you need to keep that in mind as you are speaking into it, because it doesn't make any sense for you to buy a microphone and then not stay within its pickup patterns. At that point, you might as well have just continued to use the laptop microphone. An omnidirectional microphone, which is another useful thing for podcasting, depending on the kind of podcasting you want to do. An omnidirectional microphone picks up a pattern in a 360 degree angle around where the microphone is. So like if you want to do an interview podcast where you're sitting down across the table from someone interviewing them, and you don't have enough money to buy 2 microphones, or you don't want to lug around 2 microphones, whatever the reason is, some microphones can be set up so that they're omnidirectional. So you just set it in between the two of you, and it will pick up both. Now the thing is, and of course, it depends. You get your money's worth depending on what you buy, but the vast majority of hobbyist omnidirectional microphones, the quality is not going to be as good as more specialized microphones like cardioid microphones, because it's because of that kind of omni nature. It is not nearly as useful, is not nearly as high quality as the cardioid would be. But it doesn't matter. Whatever kind of microphone you buy, you just need to make sure that you're playing within the parameters of the pickup patterns. So let's talk about part 2, and that's post-production. Or post-production software, I guess, or production software is a better way of putting it. So you spent a little bit of money on a microphone because that can help you sound a little more professional. It can make you sound a little more polished. It can make you sound more listenable, and that's something I should have mentioned earlier with the microphone. Unlike video mediums where people are likely sitting down to watch something, it's not directly in their ears because they may not be listening on headphones. It kind of depends. I feel like people are more forgiving of bad audio when it comes to the video medium, because you're getting both audio and visuals, right? For podcasting, the vast majority of people done in surveys about podcasting say that audio is one of the most important things that one of the most important pieces of why they will or will not listen to a podcast. And I totally get it. Like if I throw on a podcast that I think is going to be good, but then the audio is awful, like it either like blows out the speakers in my car as I'm trying to listen to it, or I have to turn it way up or way down, or one of the people is way louder than the other people, and we'll talk about how to fix that in a few minutes. I totally understand why someone would not want to listen to that. And so that's one of those things that if you want to build an audience, you're just going to have to overcome by doing your best to record your audio in a way that is pleasant on the ears. Now, because you spend a little bit of money on a microphone, now you can save money on production with some free programs. Now, if you are on a PC, my suggestion is Audacity. It is not perfect, but it is free, and we're going to take a look at it here in just a minute. If you're on a Mac, of course, there's GarageBand, which is free, and is in some ways the hobbyist industry standard, but it's only available on Macs. And because I don't really mess with Macs, I couldn't tell you how to use it, although it is very, my understanding is it's very simple, and that you or I could pick it up pretty quickly. I just don't do Macs really. So Having said that, because I'm on a PC, because because a lot of us statistically are on PCs, let's take a moment to look at Audacity. Let me switch my thing up. Yeah, there we are, and we're looking at Audacity. So this is Audacity. I'm sure that if you've never seen something quite like this looks very complicated. But for our purposes, it's one of those things that you can definitely learn as you go. And so while it looks complicated, to get started, it is not actually that difficult. So when you are sitting down to record whatever you're recording, and you want to record it, and then you want to have it in a way that you can chop it up and move it around and change it up and do whatever it is you need to do with it, that's where Audacity excels. So, for example, if you've ever, for those of us that are of a certain age, you may recognize the same. These buttons up here look a lot like what you used to see on like tape recorders, right? And so if you keep that in mind, those buttons will let you know what it is you're trying, how to do what you're trying to do, right? So, like, for example, before you can do anything, you've got to record some audio, and that's what this red circle button right here can do. So I'm gonna hit that, and now it's recording what I'm saying as I'm leading this discussion on my class, right? And so this is my pretend podcast that is recording right now, and I'm going to let it record for a little while because I want to have enough of it that I can mess around with it and show you how it works, and I'm going to stop. So now I have my imaginary podcast, which is really just me describing literally what is happening on the screen, right? But that doesn't matter because we're not going to listen to it. I'm going to show you how to manipulate it instead. So if I wanted to listen to what I just recorded, I can hit the play button, right? I hit the stop button to stop it, and now that it's here on the screen, we can edit our podcast, right? So some podcasts are very lightly edited. They don't go in and they chop out the ums and the ahs, and they don't go in and remove mistakes. In fact, one of my favorite things when I'm listening to a podcast is when one of the more heavily edited podcasts, they make a mistake and they say, okay, I'm going to cut that out, and then they forget to cut it out, so it stays in, and then that, I don't know, that makes me feel better for when I'm doing amateur stuff and I accidentally do that, if the professionals are messing that up. But the amount of editing that a podcast is going to need depends on the kind of podcast you're doing, and that's the kind of stuff that you would have decided when you were working on your podcast when you were developing your podcast last time we talked. Now, what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you how to manipulate the audio that you have. Now, it literally doesn't matter what any of this audio is. We're just going to go in and we're going to chop it up, okay? So say this section. Say I was listening to my podcast and I was like, oh, this section is awful. It's not funny, or it doesn't bring anything to the conversation, or it's a huge mess up, or like my co-host was coughing through it and we're just going to get rid of it because it doesn't add anything to the podcast. For whatever reason, you can with your mouse, you can drag and select it just like you would drag and select text on a Word document or something. Now, depending on how you want to edit it, there's a couple of different options. So, like, for example, say you wanted to just get rid of it and get rid of it forever, right? That's pretty easy. You just hit the delete button, and now it's gone. And it goes seamlessly from the thing you were saying before, the part you edited out, to whatever it is you were saying after you edited it out. And it's gone forever unless you hit Control Z and bring it back. But it has been edited out, right? You could also, I'm going to bring it back. You could also choose to do this. There's a button right here. Can you see on the screen? Yeah, it's really tiny, I'm sure. In fact, I might be able to. Hold on one second. I can fix it. I can make it. Yes. One moment. There we go. There's this button right here on the screen. That is the silence audio selection. So that will take whatever you have selected and it will bring it down to 0 decibels, so that it will just disappear, essentially. And that's this button right here. It's this button that it looks like waves, and then there's a little section that's been selected, and then there's nothing, right? Now, why would you want to do that? Because that would just lead to having a huge section of dead air, right? Why would you want to do that? Well, what if you had 2 tracks of audio, right? So at one point, and in fact, I'm just going to do this. I want a new. I'm going to add a new track, right? I'm going to click right here. I'm going to click right here. I'm going to record myself talking for a couple more minutes. Blah 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 blah. Stop. So say you have 2 tracks of audio, right? You have you talking and you have your co-host talking, or whoever you're interviewing talking. Maybe this implies that you have 2 microphones, but it's something that you might do, like say we're all doing socially distant stuff these days, and so maybe they're recording on their computer, you're recording on your computer, and then you're putting the audio together. If you have some crosstalk, right? Like if you there's a little bit of delay in Skype or Zoom, and say you talked over each other for a moment and you wanted to clean things up a little bit, what you could do is you could go in and select this section, like, look, I'm talking over myself right here, and I can click that silent audio button, and now I'm not talking over myself anymore. Now me and my co-host, which happens to be me, aren't talking over each other anymore, and you have clear audio for the other person. So it's kind of a specific use case, but I wanted to bring it up just because it is a very useful tool that you can use for that kind of editing, and it's more of a scalpel than a blunt object, which is the delete, right? Because if you just delete the thing, then there's no space, and you're still talking over each other, because whatever you're saying next will now be talking over your co-host. So it's just something I wanted to talk about. Beyond that, you've got a few other options. If you go, hold on one second. I'm going to get rid of one of these audio tracks so I can show you things. as you're working on your audio, you can, so like say again, you have 2 tracks, you can actually mute one track so that you can only hear the other one. Again, that's only really going to happen if you have 2 microphones, or if you're recording remotely, 2 people remotely. Up at the top, there's a menu that for some reason I can't get it to show, but if you click on it, it allows you to add new tracks. So I'm gonna add a new stereo track. A lot of this works just like every other program that you've ever used. You can zoom in on the WAV file, you can zoom out. Hold on, let me fix my thing so that you can actually see me doing that. There's the zoom in and zoom out buttons right there in the middle of the screen. Boop, boop, boop. I'm zooming in. Boop, boop, boop. Zooming out, right? I'm trying to think of other useful. You have volume. There we go. You've got volume here in the middle. You can change the volume of your microphone as it's recording, or you can change the volume of the audio as you're editing it. Again, all of this stuff is relatively simple for podcasting. Especially hobbyist podcasting, the thing you're going to be doing the most is selecting parts that you don't want in your podcast and deleting them, right? And to that end, let's add one other thing. So say you are wanting to do a podcast where it's if you attended my last class, then you know that one of the things that I call one of the categories of podcasts, and it is like heavily edited podcasts, right? So like Serial or This American Life, or tons of other ones where it's like an interview, but it's heavily edited, right? It's not the Joe Rogan experience where you're just 2 people sitting across from each other talking at each other for an hour or 2. It's more like, okay, so we have this interview, we have a narrative, and we're gonna chop the interview up and we're gonna move it around, right? Now that's really hard, so I wouldn't suggest you start doing that as your first podcast. But say you do want to move stuff around, like say you're like, okay, well, I've done this interview and I want all the thematic stuff, the stuff that resonates thematically, I want it all to go on into the same area. You can move these bits and pieces around in Audacity. Now Audacity is not the best at this kind of thing, but it can be done, and it again is free. So I give it a lot of extra points for being free. So whoops. There we go. So say that I have this section right here. Hold on. Wait. I forgot that I had expanded things. Let me fix it. Okay. There we are. So say I have this section right here. I've got this section that I have selected, and I'm like, man, that is a really funny outtake. Or, that's one of the things that I like to do. It's cheesy and cliche, I know, but like really funny stuff, I like to take it and put it at the end of the podcast, so that you have like the bloopers, which again I know is cheesy and cliche, and I didn't invent it. I just think it's funny. So say I have this huge mess up, and I'm like, man, that is hilarious. I'm going to take it. I'm going to select it. I hit Control X, and now it's gone, right? But Control X, if you're familiar, is the cut feature, right? So now I can take it down here and I can paste it into the end, right? And so now at the very end of my podcast, I have this little funny section, right? It can be done. You can do anything, or you can do that with anything, right? So again, say you have an interview and you're like, okay, well, I want. We talked about this subject and then we moved on we got distracted before moving back to that subject. I want to take that distraction and I want to move it to a different section of the podcast so that all the stuff that is thematically linked is together. I don't know. I've never really messed with interview podcasts, but so I'm just trying to think of use cases, right? All you have to do is select it, cut it, paste it where you want it to go. And so you using those tools, using tools that we're used to, right? Cutting and pasting and copying, you can move bits and pieces around to go where you want them to go. But do be careful, because once it's been cut, and if you haven't pasted it and then you go and cut something else, then it will be gone, and it will be gone forever. So the next thing I want to talk about, and we're going to go back to there we go. So we're going to go back to Audacity here in a minute, but as we kind of wind down, and as we start thinking about the production production side of things, one of the things that I want to take a moment to talk about is how to take what you've done and polish it. Because the reality is that if you had a really nice microphone and you had were able to edit pretty well, and you just sat down with Audacity, you can make a pretty good podcast, but it won't have the polish that podcasts these days have, right? A lot of podcasts have just a little bit of extra editing or a little bit of extra finish, and these are what we're going to talk about. So hold on one second. There we go. My thing was not keeping up for some reason. So we're going to talk about noise gating, we're going to talk about a program called Levelator, and we're going to talk about copyright free music. So we're going to start with noise gating, and I'm going to try to show you how this works on Audacity, although sometimes it does not want me to show people how this works. So anyways, noise gating is the secret weapon of podcasts, in my opinion, and live streaming and a bunch of other stuff. But noise gating is why in professional podcasts you almost never hear people take a breath, even though breathing is surprisingly loud, especially when people are talking or if they're getting animated. Breathing, as you probably heard when I just did it right now, is one of those things that once you hear it, it is hard to unhear. And the great thing is in the digital, because we're in the digital world, you can just make it so that the programs like Audacity, programs like GarageBand, I know it can be done. I just don't know how I need to just get my hands on GarageBand for a little while. I don't want to. PC for life. But the noise gating allows you to take sounds below a certain decibel and make it so that the computer just doesn't record those. And so it'll essentially be okay, anything under X decibel, I'm not going to record. But then when I hear someone talking, which is above that decibel, I will record. And it does it automatically for you. This is something that I wish I had known when I was making my own podcasts. Because for 4 years, I would go through and edit my podcasts and find every single breath and cut it out. Every single breath of my co-hosts and cut it out. And it was a completely annoying process. But it's one of those things that when you go back and listen to your own stuff compared to the professional stuff, all of a sudden you hear it, right? And so for noise gating, you see the little menu on the screen. That is what your noise gating menu is going to look like in Audacity. And so you just you set up the decibel, the decibel cutoff, and it allows you to set it up so that it automatically ignores. Oh shoot! I'm sorry. Here we go. There we go. Sorry about that. Wasn't even showing you my thing. There we go. So there's your menu that I was talking about. So you've got the amount of reduction. How much do you want to reduce the decibel? The sound. What the threshold is. So where does the cutoff start? And then, of course, the attack decay is how fast you want it to go up and down. I would mess with that. That's like professional level stuff. But you can set it up so that like anything under 48 decibels, or if not 48 decibels, negative 48 decibels, it just doesn't record. It doesn't record. What it does is it blankets it out, right? So essentially what it does is it takes stuff that is under negative 48 decibels and reduces it by, and the way this is set up right now, by 12. And so it makes it so that you just literally cannot hear it. And again, this is one of those things that's not necessary, and it is a little more advanced than some of the other stuff we talked about, because we've also talked about some pretty simple editing stuff, right? But this is the kind of thing that is even though it's advanced, it's pretty simple to set up and is huge for like making your podcast seem more polished. Let me see if I can. I kind of would like to. So here's Audacity. So you'll go to Effect, which it's not. This is probably not going to work. For some reason, it doesn't want to show you my. Yeah, it doesn't want to show you my menus, so I don't think this is going to work. So anyways, you'll just have to trust the the screenshot that I had, this screenshot. But that is what it would look like. I just wanted to be able to show you how it moves, like how to move it around and stuff. But again, a huge way to polish your podcast and make it seem more professional. The second way that we can make your podcast seem a little more professional is through a program called Levelator. It is a free program. It is unfortunately not being updated anymore, but it will still work for now. Hopefully someone comes out with a more up-to-date version of it. But Levelator will take all of the different tracks that you have on your podcast. So if you've added music, like what we're going to talk about next, or if you have a co-host and you're on two different tracks, it will take all of those tracks and put them on the same level, which I know sounds like the kind of thing, sounds pretty simple, and it is, but it can also be a little bit tedious because everybody's microphone is a little bit different, and it's the kind of thing. It's the kind of thing that as you're sitting and editing it, you will get used to, and then a listener will think, "Wow, why is one person so loud and one person so quiet?" And Levelator will come in and it will take it and flatten it all out for you. It is a free program. Again, it is safe for you to download. It is a lifesaver because it will take what could be some very tedious work and do it for you in a matter of minutes, and you don't even have to lift a finger. So I don't really have anything else to say about it, but it is something that you should look into, especially if you have more than one person on more than one microphone. If it's two people talking to the same microphone, Levelator is not going to do anything, so just ignore it. But if you have two or three people on their own laptops talking into a thing into their own tracks, Levelator is a lifesaver. Finally, for Polish, copyright-free music. Now, music is a great way to set mood on a podcast. A lot of even beyond like intro music. Obviously, almost every podcast. I think every podcast I've ever listened to, I think has opening closing bumpers of music right during the introduction and the conclusion. Obviously, you have to work around copyright for this kind of thing. Like, you couldn't just take the latest Taylor Swift song and put it on your podcast. Well, as long as very few people listen to your podcast, you could probably get away with it. But it would be it would be immoral for you to do that. And then if you did ever take off, all of a sudden you'd get either sued or your podcast would have to be taken down. So it would be much easier for you to use free music, right? Free copyright-free music. And so there are a couple of different archives of that kind of thing on the internet. My favorite is the Free Music Archives, which you can find at freemusicarchive.org. It's a free place where people post thousands of songs a week that are copyright free and that you can use on your podcast. All you have to do is create a login, and then you can download them and put them on your podcast. Now, each creator has different attribution requirements, and you can find those over here. They are all under the Creative Commons attribution requirements, and they have every different genre. You might have to, at the end of your podcast, say, "Oh, the music for this podcast was created by so and so," that kind of thing. But at least it's free, and you get to use it. Now, I specifically have Poddington Bear pulled up here because Poddington Bear is a artist that has made a somewhere in the range of a bazillion free pieces of music of all kinds of different genres that are made specifically for podcasters. So he's made 59 albums with 818 tracks, wide variety of different genres, wide variety of quality, in my opinion. But like they made these songs specifically for use in podcasts and for free. So Poddington Bear is always a good place on the Free Music Archives to start looking for the kind of mood music that you would like to put in to your podcast. Now, beyond that, the kind of music that you want to put in depends on your depends on the podcast that you're making, right? Depends on the kind of stuff that you decided back at the first class, right? Like is it heavily edited? Are you trying to set a mood? Or is it the kind of thing where you just want intro music and outro music, right? It's going to depend on the type of podcast that you want. Remember that if it's a lot of talking, like you may be tempted, and I've been tempted to do this in the past too. So say you're like, okay, well, I think it sounds better if there's just like quiet music in the background the whole time, right? That may be the case. It also might mean that if you're talking the whole time, it makes it harder for you to understand what people are saying. So like this is the kind of stuff that you're gonna have to decide before you ever start making your podcast. Actually, as we've been talking, have thought of a fourth thing for Polish. It is a very simple thing. It actually should be just part of my microphone slide, and that is a pop filter. I don't actually have one at the moment, and I don't know if my P's are being very plosive, but you can buy them on Amazon. You can buy them a lot of different places. You can make them out of pantyhose if you wanted, but it's just a thing that goes between your mouth and the microphone to blunt the P sounds, the plosives, and it will just make you sound better. And they're not terribly expensive. Like, all of these are less than $10. And again, or again, you can make your own. Again, using pantyhose. Part 4. And this is real simple and short, and then we'll be done, I think, if I remember correctly. Be prepared to make burner episodes. Even the professionals, even the radio professionals that have gotten into making podcasts, make multiple practice episodes before they ever release their first one. Especially if, and I encourage everyone who's starting a podcast to do the same. Especially if you're working with someone that you've never worked with before, and or you have a co-host, and you need to feel out how you work together, or you need to make a podcast and then edit it and then like circulate it to people that you know and trust to give constructive criticism. Be prepared to make those burner episodes. Be prepared to make multiple episodes that no one's ever going to hear, so that you can get your feet under you, so that you can get a good rhythm going with your co-host, or work out some of the kinks in the system. I know that that's no fun. I know that it stinks to spend a lot of time working on something that no one's ever going to see or hear, but it is my suggestion that you do that to improve the quality of your podcast. Now, that is all I've got for today. Remember, first week, the first Friday of December, we'll be talking about distribution, which may actually be the shortest of the 3 podcast classes. It used to be the most difficult part of creating a podcast, but is now, it's been simplified. But I'm still gonna walk you through how it works. So as I said earlier, if you have any questions, I will keep an eye on the live chat for a few minutes, or for maybe like a minute, and then I'll see you again next class. All right. Have a good day, and I'll see you next month.